Everything hinges on this as heading into next season after a masterclass offseason by Doug Armstrong with new recently additioned players to the roster. The St. Louis Blues playoff hopes hinges on these key details, and we're going to break down exactly how they stack up against the rest of the West. We're going to break down this exactly what Blues fans need to look forward to and key players within this lineup that have to step up. We're going to break down all this and so much more later on this episode. Before we get into that, we just want to give a huge shout out to everyone watching this video. If you haven't hit the sub button yet, we're trying to reach our goal of 4,000 subscribers before training camp starts, which is just a week and a bit away. So make sure to go down, hit that subscribe button, and also hit the new hype button down in the comments as well. But with that, dears, let's just hop straight into this. And before we get into Doug Armstrong and everything like this, I do want to put out, we've seen the St. Louis Blues put out today that Marco Scandella, a Blues legend if you want to call him, that did announce his retirement. I do remember when they got him and they went on a 5, 6, 7 game win streak, and Scandella seemed like a big part. But go down and put your favorite memory from Scandella being on the team. And with that, dears, let's just get straight into it today, where we know Doug Armstrong added a lot of reinforcements to the roster. Pius Suter, Bjugstad, going out to make a trade for Logan Mailloux. What is your overall thoughts? And listen, we're going to get into the implications and everything like this as well. But what is your overall thoughts on this team after Game 7 of the playoffs going into Game 1 of next season?
Well, first of all, shout out to Marco Scandella, the St. Louis Blues legend. I'm sure we're going to see tons of comments about how many legendary moments he had with the organization. But obviously, like you mentioned, masterclass offseason from Doug Armstrong this offseason. He made this team so much better, and I think the Blues are ready to compete. Obviously, I think that they were ready to compete last season, but based off of the last couple of years, they've really just arrived back on the scene. I think they are, in terms of expectations from not just the fans, but league wide, this is a team that should be in the playoffs. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they fare in the Central Division. We'll get into that in a little bit too. But one thing's for sure, you have a lot of players and you added a lot of players that I think can perform in the playoffs and have had big moments in the playoffs. You look at Suter, he's had some big moments for the Vancouver Canucks in the playoffs, can be a playoff performer at times. Obviously, he's going to be playing a little bit lower in the lineup for the Blues, but he can move around. He can play the wing. He's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. We've been talking about it all summer that you can kind of move him around if you need to. Special teams, stuff like that, you can play in different situations. So he's going to be a big part of this team this year, especially if there are some injuries. There's always going to be injuries. The regular season, moving forward is going to be a little bit longer too. Obviously, it's only 2 games, but that is a factor, right? So you have to keep that in mind. So love that move, and I think he's going to be a big X factor for this team. Another guy I'm looking at that has to step up big is Philip Broberg, and I think we're all expecting that, but if he takes that next step forward, this team is going to be extremely hard to play against. So he's another guy I'm looking at. And in terms of defense, I think Logan Mailloux, you acquired him for a reason. You traded a guy off this immediate roster who was going to be in the lineup, or at least we assume. Of course, there's a bit of a logjam at the forward position. We'll see what the lineup looks like, how that plays out in training camp. But Logan Mailloux, to me, you acquired him for a reason. That is to play in the NHL this year. He's ready to take the next step. But is he, right? You're assuming that he's able to, and you're looking at some of the work in the AHL, and you're thinking, okay, now the next step is to play full-time in the NHL and try and get all of these numbers to convert to the NHL level. So we'll see if that actually happens. I think he has to play really well this year for the Blues to find success, because he's kind of been ushered into that spot, and you traded away a really good player that would be in the NHL for his services. So if it doesn't work out, who's next on the list, right? Like you're calling up a couple guys. It's still a good defense, don't get me wrong, but he was brought in to play a certain role, and you have to start getting him ready for that. And if he's kind of, sputtering maybe he's up and down between the NHL and the AHL this year, that could be a problem. So I think that's a much bigger storyline than people are making it out to be this year. He has to play in the NHL, and he has to play relatively well. He has to look like he's at least taking a step forward.
And we'll talk a bit about the salary cap and how the Blues can actually go out to add more help on the defensive end. But this team is heading into next year after finishing in second in the wild card spot. Now, the big thing with the Blues, they need to be consistent all year. We've seen the huge win streak they went on, setting franchise records to make it into the playoffs. But a lot of these teams are going to continue being dominant. These are teams that are not going to be easy to knock out of a playoff spot. So with the Blues coming in, I do truly believe, listen, last year's team was incredible. It was a miracle. We almost seen another 2019 run to a Stanley Cup final, but listen, we don't want to talk about Game 7 too much, but this is a team that could very much work their way up through the standings if they can stay consistent through the entire season. Now listen, Doug Armstrong, like we've been saying, have added great talent. Pius Suter coming in after a career year with the Canucks, scoring 25 goals. We know he's elite on the defensive end, getting some Selke votes. We know he can play throughout the lineup as a center where he's above 45% every single season, pushing on 50. He's a guy that can play in all units in your lineup on the wing. Pius Suter is a big add to the team. Logan Mailloux, as you said, does need to take that step to translate his game straight into NHL action. We've seen with the Montreal Canadiens. He did come in scoring 2 goals, 2 assists, and 4 points in 7 games. So if Logan Mailloux can step into this lineup, add a power play quarterback to the team, but also someone that's a big body, physical, this team is ready to take a huge step. And that's not even touching on all the talent they have within the lineup ready to take a next step. Dylan Holloway, we've talked about a bunch, is primed to be a 30-goal scorer. Robert Thomas looking primed for a 100-point season. Darius, looking at this team, we know they added Bjugstad, they added more bodies, but is there someone within this group that you think can almost propel them to the next level to push the Blues into a team where they're not only a wild card, but maybe top of their division?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about guys like Jimmy Snuggerud. What's that output going to look like, right? Obviously, Jordan Kyrou, he's good for at least 70 points a year, maybe 80 points. To me, this year, I think that it might have to be Robert Thomas, and not necessarily taking a big step forward, but just a guy who's going to say, all right, guys, follow me kind of thing into war. And obviously, you have your captain in Braden Shen, but he's not that type of guy anymore. Of course, he's very valuable to the team. He is the captain. You need the leadership in the room and guys that have been there and done that. But to me, it's Robert Thomas in terms of, production, the work ethic, all of that stuff. And he has a chip on his shoulder heading into this year. He wants to make Team Canada's Olympic team, right? So, and obviously he has a good shot at doing that. Again, there's a lot of politics and stuff that go into it. The GM of Team Canada is your GM with the St. Louis Blues, Doug Armstrong. So he has a decent shot, but he has to play well, right? And I think that he recognizes that. So he wants to do that. He wants to win a Stanley Cup. So to me, I'm looking at that guy. The other interesting thing that you brought up when you're looking at the standings across the league from last year, to me, the Winnipeg Jets have taken a step back. Will they win the, President's Trophy again? I'm not so sure about that. The Dallas Stars, of course, are a great team. I think they, have some great pieces still. The Avalanche are always going to be in the mix as long as they have McKinnon, Makar, all of these guys, right? Landeskog's back now, which is pretty crazy. Are the Blues a wild card team? I could see them being a wild card team. The Central is very, very good, right? Let's make no mistake about it. But I do think there is potential for a couple of those teams to take a step back. They're still in the mix, don't get me wrong, and once you're in the playoffs, it's going to be a problem to play them, but I think the Blues have actually taken more steps forward this offseason through some of the moves they made than people realize. So I think that maybe they end up being a wild card team still, but I think in terms of, how they match up in the playoffs, this is a really good team, and I think they can match up against pretty much anyone in that division, and therefore probably the league.
And I mean, I think the big thing is, even looking below them, there is a couple teams that have taken a step. The Vancouver Canucks were injury-riddled all season. They will take a step. The Calgary Flames are a team just on the cusp of making the playoffs. Below that, though, there's a lot of teams. Nashville went out like they were in a franchise mode in a video game, spending all their money just to miss the playoffs. There's a lot of variables when it comes to the teams below, but the St. Louis Blues added enough depth to a team that was already very good that I think they can make the push. Now listen, you have elite goaltender, you have a 1A, 1B goaltender that a lot of players and teams don't have at the very moment, but at the end of the day, this is the Blues team that can add so much more. Just over $8 million in cap space. We're going to do a full video on this as well, where they can add new players, they can go out, they can make this team deeper. This Blues team is primed for a nice run in the playoffs. It's going to be a lot hinging on them making a consistency, players stepping up, people hitting their peak, but this Blues team is going to be very fun. And listen, we're going to be covering all season long. But with that, guys, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure to go down and leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. Where do you think the Blues finish? Who do you think leads them in goals, assists, total points? Who's the starting goaltender going into game 1 of the playoffs? Let us know all down in the comments. While you're down there, with that, we'll hop straight into comments today, where we do get a comment from Rocket. Where's Mark Pye on the prospect list? He keeps coming up in trade rumors. Listen, I'm nothing more than a 4th line grinder. My value is probably future consideration, so I'm not going anywhere. Listen, Doug Armstrong, give me the green light. I can go out, throw hits, and I'm not getting moved. And we will stay here giving you content all season. If you want to go down and leave a comment, you can feature it on Comment of the Day. And that'll be it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, like I said, go down and leave a like. Go down and leave a hype while you're at it as well. I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Darius, and take care.